A former president stares straight ahead as a judge reads his sentence. Life in prison. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of police officers hold the line between supporters demanding his release and critics who wanted him dead. South Korea just delivered one of the most dramatic legal verdicts in modern democratic history. And that's only the beginning of what happened today.
This is Zeitgeist. It's Thursday, February 19th, 2026. Tonight, a life sentence for insurrection. Billions pledged at Trump's Board of Peace while Europe stays home. A trade war that could blow up NAFTA's successor, the Justice Department admitting it broke dozens of court orders, and warships playing chess in the Middle East.
Former South Korean President Yoon Yeol was sentenced to life in prison today for leading an insurrection, making him the first democratically elected leader in South Korean history to receive the country's harshest possible sentence. The Seoul Central District Court found him guilty of masterminding the December 2024 martial law crisis that plunged Asia's fourth largest economy into political chaos.
Walk me through what he actually did. Because martial law, that's a term most people associate with military dictatorships, not a modern democracy that makes Samsung phones.
On December 3rd, 2024, at around 10 p.m. local time, Yoon went on national television and declared emergency martial law. He sent soldiers to surround the National Assembly. His martial law command issued a proclamation suspending all political activities, controlling the media and publications, and authorizing arrests without warrants. He ordered military counterintelligence officers to arrest 14 key politicians, including the Speaker of the National Assembly and the leaders of both the ruling and opposition parties.
So, he tried to physically seize the legislature and arrest his political opponents?
That's exactly what the judge found. Judge Ji Yoon said the purpose of Yoon's actions was to, and I'm quoting, send troops to the National Assembly, block the assembly building and arrest key figures in order to prevent lawmakers from gathering to deliberate or vote. He said it was sufficiently established that Yoon intended to paralyze the assembly's functions for a considerable period of time. This was South Korea's first martial law declaration in over 4 decades, and it recalled the country's dark history of military-backed dictatorships.
But it didn't work. How did they stop it?
Lawmakers literally rushed through a military blockade to get inside the building. Within 6 hours, a quorum managed to gather and voted unanimously to lift the martial law decree. 6 hours. That's all it took for South Korean democracy to defend itself on the spot. But the legal consequences took much longer. Yoon was impeached by lawmakers 2 weeks later, formally removed by the Constitutional Court in April 2025, and has been under arrest since last July.
Prosecutors actually asked for the death penalty.
They did. They argued his actions posed an existential threat to South Korean democracy, but most legal analysts expected life, since the poorly planned power grab didn't result in casualties, and South Korea hasn't executed anyone since 1997. The court also convicted and sentenced 5 former military and police officials involved in enforcing the decree. Former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun got 30 years for his central role in planning the operation and ordering the arrests. Former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo got 23 years for trying to legitimize the decree and falsifying records.
What's the political reaction been?
Split, as you'd expect. The Liberal Democratic Party expressed regret the court stopped short of death, calling the ruling a lack of a sense of justice. The Conservative People Power Party, Yoon's own former party, issued a public apology, saying they feel a deep sense of responsibility for the disruption to the nation. Yoon's lawyers called it a predetermined verdict and said the rule of law has collapsed. They're considering an appeal, but for now, the 65-year-old former president faces the rest of his life behind bars.
One country reckoning with a leader who tried to seize power by force. Meanwhile, another one spent today trying to project it on the world stage.
Today in Washington, dozens of world leaders gathered for the inaugural meeting of Donald Trump's Board of Peace, an ad hoc international council set up to oversee his ceasefire plan in Gaza and, increasingly, other global conflicts. Trump announced that 9 member nations pledged $7 billion for Gaza relief, and that the United States itself would contribute $10 billion to the Board of Peace.
$17 billion sounds significant. Is it?
It's a fraction. The UN, World Bank, and EU estimate Gaza reconstruction will cost at least $70 billion, so $17 billion is a start. But the real question is whether these pledges actually turn into concrete action. The board's 100-day peace and recovery plan, unveiled by Jared Kushner in Davos, has stalled. Aid into Gaza remains at a trickle, and the 15 members of the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, the technocrats who are supposed to be rebuilding things, are sitting in Cairo right now, frustrated, waiting. They don't even know what their budget is or who they answer to.
And the guest list for this summit tells a story on its own.
It does. The leaders of the UK, Germany, France all declined to attend. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen turned down her invitation. Trump rescinded Canada's invitation after Mark Carney criticised him in Davos, and in a significant blow, Pope Leo XIV announced the Vatican would not join, with the Pope's top diplomat saying it should be the United Nations managing international crises, not a Trump-chaired council. Even Netanyahu, who signed up to the idea just last week, chose to skip it and sent his foreign minister instead.
So, you have a major fundraising event with pledges from mostly Middle Eastern states, Hungary, Kazakhstan, Argentina, countries that analysts say are currying favor, not solving the crisis.
That's the criticism. As one analyst from the International Crisis Group put it, if this meeting does not result in fast, tangible improvements on the ground, particularly on the humanitarian front, its credibility will quickly crumble, and the clock is ticking.
If the Board of Peace is about Trump projecting influence abroad, the next story is about him wielding a very different kind of pressure against one of America's closest allies.
The Trump administration is now openly floating the idea of scrapping USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, and replacing it with a bilateral deal that cuts Canada out entirely. This is the $1.9 trillion trade pact that Trump himself signed during his first term, and it's up for a mandatory review this summer. The administration is using every available pressure point to force Prime Minister Carney into concessions.
What does every pressure point look like in practice?
Earlier this month, Trump threatened to block the opening of a brand new US-Canada bridge, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, hours after the billionaire owner of a competing crossing met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Last fall, he suspended trade talks entirely over a Canadian ad featuring Ronald Reagan criticising tariffs. It's textbook leverage. Find the thing your counterpart needs and sit on it.
But Congress is actually pushing back on tariffs now, which is rare.
Very rare. Last week, the House voted 219 to 210 to pass a resolution overturning Trump's emergency declaration justifying 35% tariffs on Canadian goods. 6 Republicans crossed party lines, the first bipartisan rebuke from the chamber on trade. And looming over all of this is the Supreme Court, which has been sitting on a challenge to Trump's tariff powers for over 100 days since oral arguments. They could rule as soon as Friday. The Congressional Budget Office says inflation will continue rising over the next 3 years because of tariffs, and that American consumers bear about 70% of the cost.
So, the trade architecture governing a trillion-dollar North American relationship is genuinely in danger, from the president who built it.
Meanwhile, closer to home, the Justice Department made a remarkable admission this week about how the law is being followed, or not, on the ground.
What happened?
The DOJ acknowledged in a court filing that federal authorities have violated at least 52 judicial orders in New Jersey immigration cases since early December. Associate Deputy Attorney General Jordan Fox reviewed 547 habeas petition cases, that's immigrants challenging the legality of their detention, and found violations in roughly 1 out of every 10. In 17 instances, ICE transferred detained immigrants after judges had explicitly ordered them not to be moved. In one case, a man was deported to Peru despite a judicial injunction specifically prohibiting his removal.
52 violations in one state in 10 weeks. What's the DOJ's explanation?
Fox described every single violation as inadvertent, communication delays, administrative oversights. But the judge overseeing the matter, Michael Fabias, wasn't entirely persuaded. He noted the pattern was, quote, not fully an outlier, and wrote that judicial orders should never be violated. He's now ordered the DOJ to file an affidavit detailing what procedures are or will be put in place to make sure court orders are actually followed. Whether this is a system buckling under volume or an institution deprioritizing judicial authority, that's a question a lot of legal observers are asking tonight. And finally tonight, the Persian Gulf. Iran and Russia conducted joint naval drills today in the Gulf of Oman and Indian Ocean, while the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier moved through the Atlantic toward the Mediterranean. Iran has also been running live fire exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage through which a fifth of the world's traded oil moves. Nuclear talks between the US and Iran remain stalled, and Trump wrote on social media that he may need to use military bases in the UK to eradicate a potential attack by a highly unstable and dangerous regime. Inside Iran, mourning ceremonies for the thousands killed in last month's crackdown are turning into fresh anti-government protests. The US-based human rights activists news agency estimates more than 7,000 people have been killed, more than double the Iranian government's official figure.
A former president sentenced for trying to overthrow democracy. A peace summit attended by everyone except the people needed for peace. A trade deal the president who created it might destroy. A government admitting it can't follow its own courts. And warships circling each other in the most strategically vital waterway on Earth. That is your Thursday. We'll see you tomorrow.